Hey guys, it's Sheer. Today we'll be talking about BRM5's new game mode that will come out for testing soon, Zombies. A few other YouTubers and I got the opportunity to test the new Zombies game mode before the public release, which will last about an hour at 5 PM EST on Monday. However, you do need to be level 50 to access it. So if you don't know already, Zombies will be split into two different game modes, PvPvE and PvE. PvPvE will be centered around survival, acting like your more standard looter shooter, and PvE will be a little more similar to open world, as it's referred to as the rescue game mode in the announcements. It's almost like a throwback to the original Blackhawk rescue games. There's a lot of talk about here, a lot of good and some bad, so let's dive right into it. Let's start off with my general impressions of the game mode. Overall, Zombies was pretty fun, however there were some minorly frustrating factors to it. Most of the frustration ended up coming from players, since some people decided that they just wanted to shoot everybody, kill everybody, instead of bothering to work together, group up, and do that whatnot. And what?
It's probably me, dude.
You had the
Oh my god.
Oh no, there was a grenade that went off there, so...
Oh, that was me. Oh! Did you just shoot
yeah,
me?
no,
Come on. I just found a backpack. What's wrong with you? But generally speaking, I understand there's not really much you can do that just because it's a PvP centered game mode. So it's pretty much just unavoidable. It felt like a pretty standard looter shooter with zombies. Just any other looter shooter in the genre, probably like Tarkov. I actually can't think of any other examples right now, but with zombies. The zombies itself seemed pretty cool. They were pretty fleshed out so far and they weren't very buggy based off of what I've seen, and they seemed pretty well balanced for the most part. I wasn't feeling like I couldn't win a 1v1 with a normal zombie. It wasn't really something that I felt like, oh, this, when I died, it really felt like completely out of my control. The map itself was very good in my opinion. Environmentally, it was very well built. It looked pretty good. It was jam-packed. It was very fleshed out. There were a lot of enterable buildings and apartments. Obviously, it was still a little bit work in progress, but from what I saw so far, it was really good. There were a lot of things scattered everywhere, plenty of cover, things to loot, stuff to run around. Even though it was relatively small, it felt pretty big because of the stuff scattered everywhere. It felt a little confusing to navigate around, and that definitely added to the illusion of being a larger map, which I'd like. You were able to interact with pretty much everything, all the things that look like containers you could loot, but the loot was generally scarce. However, I do think it added to the experience, with ammo being rare and guns and other munitions being even rarer. Performance-wise, Zombies ran pretty well for me. Because I don't use an FPS unlocker, I ran at a solid 60 FPS the entire time. Occasionally, if there were big hordes, then I would get frame dips if I looked in the jump direction or I was nearby them. But generally speaking, with how packed the map is, despite it being pretty small, they did a pretty good job on optimization. Generally speaking, I really enjoyed this playtest. I really enjoyed how Zombies is looking so far, and I really do look forward to what else there is. So let's talk about just the general mechanics, things that it brings to the table compared to the standard overworld or PvP gameplay. So obviously there is a looting mechanic which is pretty essential to the game mode. There is no transfer from open world or anything. You start off completely naked with just a knife. The mechanics are pretty standard. You find stuff in containers laying around the map. You can find clothes, weapons, ammo, random junk. There's a lot of random junk that just lays around in containers taking up space, and none of them really do anything. Certain items, however, tend to spawn in certain areas. So for example, you might find guns, ammo, more stuff like grenades in like a military zone, which I'll talk about later. And there are what seems like random apparent Zombies exclusive items. So I saw something like a Remington 700. It was like completely wooden, like random melee items like a crowbar or a wrench. And I did see an SR-15, but I have no idea if that's going to be Zombies exclusive or not. So there's a hunger and thirst mechanic. It's pretty standard. It acts as expected. So there's also rotten food and dirty water you can find around the map, which will satiate you in the expected area. So like if you had rotten tuna, it would fill up your hunger. However, it would drastically lower your thirst or hunger, whatever's opposite of it. So if you drink dirty water, you would gain some thirst, but then you'd lose a lot of hunger, for example. It would be an equal trade-off. It acts as a healing system as well, interestingly enough. So if you stand still, then your health will go up and then your hunger will go down, which is an interesting implementation, but I don't dislike it. I'm actually a pretty big fan because it gives you another option to heal while not having to scrounge around for meds for a long time and then not being able to utilize them, or it's not enough. Combat is largely the same as open world and PvP. There's not really anything new to expect. Nothing has changed for the most part. There's no new medical systems, there's no advanced damaging system or anything like that. However, zombies do have a lot of health, but they are insta-kill if you shoot them in the head. You can kill them by shooting them in the torso or the limbs, but it does take a lot of hits and rounds. Hitting them elsewhere will stun them, it'll stop them for a bit, and it'll make their limb kind of go limp. And zombies also will stun you when they get to you. So it does seem that there were a little bit of changes when it comes to climbing, which I think is pretty important to talk about. First of all, zombies can climb. I'll show it in this clip right here. Wait, come over here. Come over here. Come here.
Yep, I got an MP5. I just need
Come up here. Come up here. Go around on the hood. Yes, just go, jump, bro, jump.
Oh my god.
Oh, okay, never mind. Don't jump. So yeah, on higher surfaces, zombies will end up climbing. It can be useful, but it is generally detrimental. It seems like that they have restricted some things when it comes to climbing. It seems to be kind of random though, but I think it's probably just due to the depth perception because you're in first person lock. So I just got kind of confused that something looked like I could climb, but it ended up being too tall. But zombies can climb a considerable amount and they can climb ladders, so that's definitely something you want to be careful about. So if you're on like a truck or you're on an emergency exit, then they'll start climbing towards you and then they might just catch you in the moment right there. So the way zombie spawns works, it seems that they spawn randomly throughout the map, and at nighttime their spawns increase, so they'll start spawning more often, more condensed. And there are nests, which are basically just like major zombie spawn points. So a lot of zombies will be condensed in that little area and they'll come after you. But generally speaking, it does seem like that there's better loot in those nest areas. Like there was a quarantine area that I saw which had some Humvees and stuff all around in military setups, and you could find guns and ammo and like grenades all around there, which was much more scarce outside of that area. So it generally seems like a higher risk, high reward kind of area, which they implemented into. There are also implementations for mechanics for zombie hordes. So zombies can kind of gather into huge groups. Once zombies notice a player, other zombies around will start approaching you. It'll like scream or it'll make a noise and it'll kind of bring in other zombies. So they start chasing you around. Zombies will group up together. It looks like, especially around nests, if a zombie spawns, it'll kind of make its way over to another zombie and then it'll start creating huge groups. I did notice that there were huge hordes in the daytime, which were largely unintended and will be changed. They were supposed to despawn during the day and they were only supposed to have huge hordes during the night. I did notice that there were massive hordes. I've seen groups of like 50, like in this clip right here. Guys, there's a couple of zombies at the quarantine camp. I wouldn't come here. Oh shit!
This is the
And then the screenshot right here of about 100 zombies, give or take. So one major thing that I am concerned about is how the gunplay will fit into this game mode. The current gunplay in BRM5 I feel is more oriented towards actual open world, so I don't feel like it fits very well into the PvP aspect of zombies. The TTK mostly ruins it. You die super fast and doesn't feel very survival-esque. For example, in Tarkov, if you get shot in the limb a bunch of times, it'll black out, but then if you take more damage, it'll deal damage to the rest of your body. I do understand headshots killing you instantly, but I'll talk about that in a second. But in general, I feel like the TTK is super fast and kind of ruins it, because if there are like a lot of players and dudes have guns, then it'll drastically decrease your time to survive. So I feel like that is a major concern of mine at the very least, where you'll die way too fast for it to be enjoyable, just because once somebody has a lot of guns and a lot of ammo, they'll just be able to take you out super fast and there won't be really any repercussions about it. It kind of just lets you go Rambo without getting any sort of punishment. Apparently, guns are supposed to draw in zombies in the area, but it's kind of broken right now, so it may not be worth it to shoot a random player in the future, but we'll see how that goes once they do fix them. And there is a lack of any sort of armor mechanics, and that plays into it. There's not really any form of protection unless you have a gun or you can get really close and they run out of ammo. So the lack of armor, I think, definitely plays into the TTK, just because you don't really have any form of protection once somebody has a gun and they have really good aim, or they're just able to get their sights on you and then they just shoot you and you can't really do anything about it. And again, I think Tarkov is a good example to bring up here, just because they have an armor system. Obviously, its portrayal isn't the best, but it's an armor system that could be decently implemented, because it allows you to take some rounds and get away without having some sort of instant death or anything like that. So I think an armor system would play really well into the game. So, my overall thoughts on the game mode. Generally, it's a pretty fun experience. I think it has a pretty good and enjoyable gameplay loop. Players can and will make it very frustrating, but realistically speaking, there's nothing you can do about it, because you can't just force somebody to not kill another player, otherwise that ruins the aspect of the PvP. I still think it's a very fun game mode, even if you don't like PvP, because you can have a good time interacting and surviving with other players, because the zombies still make it a stressful experience. Me personally, I don't like PvP at all. I tend to stick to overworld, but I still think it's something that you really should definitely check out, and I think you'll have fun even if you don't like PvP at all. One thing to note though is that I definitely didn't have enough time to experience it to comment fully on how the gameplay loop will play in the long term. So I would take that with a grain of salt, but in my opinion, I think it'll definitely be pretty fun to play for extended periods of time. The gameplay loop just generally feels pretty sustainable. Once they add more features and flesh it out a little more, I definitely think it'll be something that you can play over the course of some weeks or months or whatever. Again, like I said earlier, the gunplay doesn't really fit that well into the game mode or the gameplay of zombies, but I'm sure they'll make adjustments for survivability or things like that, so I'm not going to be too concerned about it, but it is something I do want to mention. And the very last thing is that I do have concerns regarding loot scarcity. I don't know how big they'll make the servers, so I am concerned about if the servers are large, like 20-25 people, like how they were in open world, how will anybody get the chance to loot things? Because like I said earlier, it was a pretty small map, so even though there's a lot of buildings and things to loot and explore, if the servers are that large, then how can we expect for everybody to get a chance to survive and not get shot or swarmed by zombies? So that's pretty much all I have for today. I want to know what you guys think. Obviously you haven't seen too much yet, but based on what I've shown you guys and what the other YouTubers are talking about, just your general thoughts and ideas and feedback on what you guys have seen so far. Don't forget that the playtest is on Monday at 5 PM EST. Make sure you are level 50 before it drops. Alright, I'll see you guys later. Bye.